Former presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard has done it again, guys. She just endorsed former President Donald Trump and shut down Vice President Kamala Harris all in one fatal swoop. As Tulsi Gabbard put it, we can't let the abuse of power go any further. Check this out.
Today, as this administration has us facing multiple wars on multiple fronts and regions around the world, and closer to the brink of nuclear war than we ever have been before. This is one of the main reasons why I'm committed to doing all that I can to send President Trump back to the White House, where he can once again serve us as our commander-in-chief. Because I am confident that his first task will be to do the work to walk us back from the brink of war. We cannot be prosperous unless we are at peace. And we can't live free as long as we have a government that is retaliating against its political opponents and undermining our civil liberties, weaponizing our very institutions against those they deem as a threat. Kamala Harris has done this over the last 3.5 years. She won't hesitate to continue that if she is elected as president. President Trump has been their first and foremost target in this because they don't want us as voters to even have the option to vote for him. I've been their most recent target, added to a secret domestic terror watch list after exposing the truth about what kind of dangers we would face if Kamala Harris is elected as president. We as Americans must stand together to reject this anti-freedom culture of political retaliation and abuse of power. We can't allow our country to be destroyed by politicians who will put their own power ahead of the interests of the American people, our freedom, and our future.
Now, honestly, guys, my uncle, he's goodness knows how old, but he's saying that if nothing else, he just wants to make sure that he makes it to November so that he can vote for Donald Trump for a third time. And if you guys feel the same way, his record speaks for itself, but it's also good to hear from the man himself because, as Donald Trump put it, we don't exactly have a president right now with Biden on vacation most of the time. Check this out.
But look at the job we did in defeating 100% of the ISIS caliphate. And other than that, I got you into no wars. You didn't have any wars. But we're going to have the big war, the war of all time, if something doesn't happen, because I don't think we have a president right now. Biden's on vacation all the time. He's depressed from being overthrown. He was overthrown. This was a coup. I think you agree with that.
100%.
This was a coup. And the person running got no votes, and they wanted to be politically correct because 6 weeks ago they thought she was a joke. And immediately the press, the press is really the biggest problem of all, the fake news, I call it, is the biggest problem of all. Because they immediately went from her being a joke, not qualified, she'll be terrible, and she's the worst vice president in history, to all of a sudden, she's wonderful. But she's not wonderful. So we have a debate coming up, and I look forward to that, and she'll be exposed.
Now, let me tell you guys, Joe Biden, he was one thing, but Kamala Harris is a total disgrace, according to a lot of people. It's actually such a frightening thing to think about that she could be our president. Actually, make that terrifying. I mean, what has she really done? Just listen to Tulsi Gabbard tear down her record of prosecuting marijuana offenses and keeping people locked up just so that she could get cheap labor. Here, check this out.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Now, I'm telling you guys, with the people that we're up against, I just want to make sure that we get a clean and fair election. You know what I mean? That's why we need to stay vigilant, guys. RNC co-chair Laura Trump, for one, is already spearheading a lot of efforts to ensure a fair election. Just take a look.
And we saw what happened in Arizona as a result of one of your lawsuits. Give us your sense of what's going on today. Ken Paxton launching this investigation saying that there are already illegals registered to vote. We just heard the same from Utah Senator Mike Lee.
Yeah, well, listen, I think the good news, Maria, is 2020 certainly taught us a lesson, and that is that we have to pay attention. I mean, it is integral to who we are as a country to have faith in our electoral process. And so we have gone above and beyond anything that you've ever seen from the RNC this election cycle. Obviously, we have our election integrity operation underway. We've already recruited 165,000 volunteers to be poll watchers, poll workers, work in the tabulation centers. We have pledged 500 lawyers on the ground in every battleground state. And in addition to that, we have had to go, unfortunately, but we have had to go state by state and make sure they're doing things like cleaning up their voter rolls, making sure that there are no illegals on their voter rolls. We had to file a lawsuit last week in the state of North Carolina to do that. You just referenced the Supreme Court decision in the state of Arizona. This is a huge win. Look, we know that there is when a federal election is underway, you can only have American citizens voting in that election. Should go without saying, but there are some states that try to push back on that. We took it to the Supreme Court because Democrats in the state of Arizona were attempting to let people register to vote without ID. We said, you need to be able to determine whether or not these are U.S. citizens before they register to vote. The Supreme Court agreed with that. And the great news is that it sets precedent across the country so other states can take this and utilize it as well.
I mean, did you guys hear about this one? 16 Republican-led states are suing the Biden administration to block a controversial parole program that gives protection from deportation to illegal immigrants who are married to U.S. citizens. So yeah, are they keeping these people in this country so that they can have more voters this November? Is that the plan? I mean, you gotta wonder what their real motives are here. Now, apparently, this parole in place rule by the Department of Homeland Security, it allows for humanitarian parole and even a path to permanent residency for certain illegal immigrant spouses of U.S. citizens without them having to leave the country. For real, guys. So as you guys can imagine, Republican states, they're all up in arms about this. They rightfully argue that this new Biden rule violates federal law, which prohibits illegal immigrants from obtaining immigration benefits, including permanent status, without first having left the country and being readmitted. Or, as they said in their filing, this is like a program that effectively promotes a new pathway to a green card and eventual citizenship. They point out that it would allow more than 1.3 million aliens who are unlawfully present here in the United States, more than 200,000 of them living in Texas, to circumvent or even completely get around the processes that were established by Congress to apply for permanent residency. Now, if that's not presidential overreach, then I don't know what is, guys. As Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton put it, under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the federal government is actively working to turn the United States into a nation without borders and a country without laws. The states in the lawsuit are Texas, Idaho, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Missouri, North Dakota, Ohio, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Wyoming. Now, according to Stephen Miller, president of America First Legal, they represent a coalition of 16 states in filing a lawsuit to block an unconstitutional Biden-Harris amnesty program that would give over 1 million illegals legal status, work permits, and a path to voting citizenship. And by the way, guys, this is on top of the Biden administration paroling up to 1,450 people a day at ports of entry via the CBP One app and allowing an additional 30,000 nationals from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela to enter the United States per month via a separate program. And apparently, the CHNV program was halted last month after an international report discovered a significant amount of fraud among these people who were applying to be supporters for migrants entering the US. Honestly, guys, at this point, who else can't wait to vote for Trump again? Drop a quick yes in the comments below. Also hit the like button to show your support. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, tap that notification bell. That way you guys won't miss any more hard-hitting content like this one. Appreciate you guys. But let's continue with this one. So Republican National Committee co-chair Laura Trump announced recently that she and the RNC are working to raise what could basically be an army of over 100,000 poll watchers and over 500 lawyers to deploy at election sites across the country in November. Their mission? Watch people vote, watch people count votes, and sue anybody who gets in the way. Because as Laura Trump put it, if we have a free, fair, and transparent election, there's no question that we will all be going to bed early on November 5th, and we'll go to bed knowing Donald Trump is going to be our our next president. Basically, they want to have people in the room whenever votes are being counted or cast. Plus, they want to have teams upon teams of volunteer lawyers that can respond to any resistance from poll officials on the ground with quick and effective litigation. Because as some of these attendees said, if Joe Biden or Kamala Harris wins this one, we're going to be headed toward World War III. So it's not just about protecting our votes, it's about protecting our families. I think a lot of us could relate to this, right? Now, honestly, guys, ensuring a fair election is probably a part of the reason former Democrat turned independent Tulsi Gabbard recently endorsed former President Donald Trump. In fact, the former Congresswoman from Hawaii spoke at the National Guard conference in Detroit and talked about how we as Americans must stand together to reject this anti-freedom culture for political retaliation and abuse of power. She said we can't allow our country to be destroyed by politicians who will put their own power ahead of the interests of the American people, our freedom, and our future. And yes, this is the same Tulsi Gabbard that ripped Kamala Harris during a Democratic primary debate for reportedly jailing hundreds of Californians for marijuana violations, then openly discussing smoking the drug herself. How hypocritical can you be? I mean, you saw the clip. Harris couldn't say a word as Gabbard pointed out how she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations, and then she went and laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. And since switching parties, Gabbard has been an outspoken critic of the Democratic Party. She's been speaking at conservative events such as the Conservative Political Action Conference and the Faith and Freedom Coalition Road to Majority Conference. More recently, she's scheduled to moderate what Donald Trump's campaign is calling a town hall with him when he visits La Crosse in Battleground, Wisconsin. Now, honestly, guys, I'm starting to see a pattern here. Have you noticed how prominent Democrats are leaving the party and they're choosing to endorse former President Trump? Because this Tulsi Gabbard came just days after former Democrat Robert F. Kennedy Jr. suspended his 2024 independent presidential bid and then threw his support behind Trump. The pattern is very clear, guys. Kennedy claimed in his withdrawal announcement that the Democratic Party waged continual legal lawfare against both Donald Trump and himself, and they ran a sham primary. And like Gabbard, RFK Jr., he said that he will be campaigning with Trump until the election. Now, according to Gabbard, RFK Jr. supporters are independent-minded people who value their freedom, who are concerned about what President Biden and Vice President Harris have done to our country and leading us onto the brink of multiple regime change wars, not to mention the brink of World War III and nuclear war. They're concerned about this broken healthcare system and the deep rot of corruption that is entrenched in almost every agency in our government. And for her, the Trump team has to make the case to his supporters about the very clear contrast between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Kamala Harris is standing for taking away our freedom, an increasingly tyrannical government, and more war versus Donald Trump, who happens to stand for peace, prosperity, and freedom. In fact, Gabbard, who ran in the 2019 Democratic presidential primary against Harris, was recently recruited by Donald Trump to help with debate prep ahead of his September 10th face-off against Vice President Kamala Harris at the National Constitutional Center in Philadelphia. Now, guys, I can't wait to see how Tulsi Gabbard teaches Trump to shut Kamala Harris down. You know what I'm saying? Now, according to Tulsi Gabbard, who's already destroyed Kamala Harris in a previous debate, our former president's debate prep is going great. She says he knows the issues. He is very honed in on Kamala Harris's record in reminding voters, what have you done for the last 3.5 years? Because as Gabbard pointed out, you can paint this rosy picture about what you're going to do, but we're paying attention to what you've already done and how her policies have already destroyed our economy, made us less safe, and we're talking about both here at home and abroad. You see, Gabbard is an anti-interventionist when it comes to foreign policy. In fact, she's even accused President Joe Biden's administration of stoking tensions around the globe. She also described Democrats as a cabal of warmongers when she became an independent. According to her, this war and suffering could have easily been avoided if Biden's administration and NATO had simply acknowledged Russia's legitimate security concerns regarding Ukraine's becoming a member of NATO, which would mean U.S. NATO forces right at Russia's border. The question is, are we going to see these issues brought up in the upcoming Trump-Harris debate? Well, this is definitely something we're going to be keeping an eye on. Now, I'm going to be right here with you guys every step of the way, leading up to the presidential debate this September 10th on ABC, and even further with that, all the way up to the election in November. Anyway, guys, just make sure you are subscribed to the channel, have that notification bell turned on so that you can get your content delivered straight to your device. How's that sound? In fact, guys, I got another video I want you guys to check out. Oprah Winfrey endorsing Kamala Harris at the DNC, but it turns out she used to be a solid Trump supporter, believe it or not. I know, it's hard to believe, but apparently the two have even talked about teaming up for an election. Donald Trump would have been president and Oprah Winfrey as vice president. Definitely check that video out right after this one, guys. And again, thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Thank you for lighting up the like button. Seriously, I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you guys on the next one.